So let's talk about the National Labor Relations Board complaint that was filed by the UAW against who? Donald Trump and Elon Musk for having a conversation on X Spaces. Yeah. So now there's a National Labor Relations Board complaint, and Patrick Simmons from National Right to Work Foundation joins me to walk everybody through the absurdity of this. As I'm understanding, Patrick, this isn't the first time the UAW has tried to file a labor board complaint against the Trump campaign, though.
Yeah, this is this is a stunt that they're pulling, and unfortunately, this National Labor Relations Board is probably going to let them get away with it. It's very much about the union boss's political priorities and trying to use this as a campaign tactic, and that's, of course, a huge disconnect with the actual rank and file of the UAW, but that doesn't stop Sean Fain from proceeding with it. And we've seen them do this against other people as well. I mean, they filed a charge against Tim Scott about a year ago for quoting Ronald Reagan. He was asked about a strike, and he talked about the Patco illegal strike and the way Reagan handled that. And the UAW filed a charge against him. So they've done this type of thing before.
Honestly, though, so we should explain. Musk and Trump were talking about when the threat to, quote, strike at Tesla or was it Twitter? I forget. And a non-union. These are non-union, shops here we're talking about here. And so there wasn't a strike. And Trump said, you should have fired him. And Musk chuckled. And it's the chuckle that got the complaint by the UAW for Elon Musk. And it's the you should have fired them by Trump that got the complaint for the Trump campaign.
Yeah, that's it. I've listened to that segment a number of times from their conversation, and it's like a 2-hour conversation, and this is literally maybe 5 or 6 seconds. And it's it started with Trump and Musk talking about the wasting of taxpayer dollars and how Trump got a better deal on Air Force One from Boeing, and then at some point Trump basically says, you know how to drive a hard deal, and when they tried to do this at one of your companies, and again it's not clear if they're talking about Tesla or Twitter. Seems like it's probably Twitter, and if it is Twitter, by the way, no one really has put this together, but I looked it up. There's a case on that at the National Labor Relations Board, and this board's own administrative law judge said actually the law was not violated. So the case hasn't ended yet, but so far the only ruling has come down in favor of Elon Musk in that particular case. But anyway, so he says this, and somehow the union claims this is a threat. It's not a threat, even if,
It already happened. It's not a threat.
Right.
Because all of this
happened. This is something that happened.
Okay,
exactly.
So
this is something that happened.
This is what people don't understand. Here's what people don't understand, that the UAW or the Teamsters or whoever else can file complaints, totally frivolous complaints about whatever. They can do it, and if they've got the NLRB in their back pocket, then these people actually have to respond. But what is the UAW? Let's just think about the standing issue before the United States Supreme Court or any court in the country. How the hell would the UAW be the party to file the complaint when they're filing the complaint about Twitter and none of their workers work at Tesla?
Yeah, well, no, that's right. And it's actually, I was able to get a copy of both these complaints, and the one against Trump is actually filed against Donald Trump for president 2024. So it's against his campaign as an employer. And so the totally ridiculous reasoning is that somehow this is a threat against the employees of the Donald Trump campaign, which is absurd and totally laughable. And the Elon Musk one is filed against Tesla. And we do know the UAW has been trying to organize Tesla, but Tesla workers have wanted nothing to do with them. And so, that's what's going on here. But really, they want the headlines so they can say, oh, look, they violated the law, and never mind that Sean Fain, who's
Go ahead, please. Never mind that Sean Fain.
Sean Fain, whose name is on, he's the charging party in both of these cases. He was on TV right after endorsing Biden, and he said, this is a quote, direct quote, "Let me be clear about this. A great majority of our members will not vote for President Biden." And yet he endorsed President Biden, and he's obviously now switched over to Harris because that's apparently the switch that's happened. And so this is not about what the rank and file want. A lot of them will probably vote for Trump. A lot of them are still considering Trump, but they're trying to use it as a political weapon. And unfortunately, this labor board lets them get away with it.
So I don't understand. You can explain this to me, because a lot of people don't understand. All they did was make a couple of comments. How does this, I mean, how could you even argue that it violates the law? What law are we talking about where you can't speak and make jokes or talk about things that happened in the past? And why, again, does the law permit the highly political operatives, who are the well-paid political operatives, who are strip mining dues, member dues payments to fund campaigns those members don't support? How in the hell do these political operatives, how can they claim they have the law on their side to file these complaints?
Well, I think the real answer is that they don't have the law on their side. And if this ever got to a federal judge in a federal court, as opposed to the very, very highly biased Biden-Harris NLRB, it would get laughed out of court because, of course, we've got this wonderful thing in this country called the Constitution and the First Amendment. But they know that they can drag it out at the board before it actually makes its way to a court, and so they can use this as campaign fodder for the next few months. At that point, maybe they make it quietly go away, which is basically what the UAW did against Tim Scott when it became clear his campaign wasn't going anywhere. But in the meantime, like I said, they get these headlines and they get to run ads against against President Trump. And try and bully and spend their own workers' money, many of whom will be voting for Trump, against the candidate that they support.
Well, the National Labor Relations Act is begging for some serious clarification. If there is any sort of vagueness that would permit someone to even try to make an argument that a person who has no relationship, actually not even no relationship, but has a hostile relationship, who would like to see both the Trump campaign and Twitter and Tesla collapse. I mean, they are working, the UAW leadership, again, I'm exempting the union workers here, are working to do everything they can to hurt these companies and to hurt Donald Trump. So that suggests to me that National Labor Relations Act is long overdue for a revisit.
Yeah, no question about that. I mean, it is for a long time operated as if, the rest of the sort of basic legal principles, including the Constitution and the First Amendment, don't apply to it. And maybe, some of these cases and some other ones that are actually ongoing, including some brought by SpaceX and also by the National Right to Work Foundation, that are challenging in federal court that very constitutional structure of the labor board. Hopefully we'll get some more oversight soon, because it's long overdue for sure. To
your point, though, that the union members, a lot of them already support the Trump campaign, and it is growing. I was listening to Frank Luntz, who is no fan of Donald Trump, who is saying, there's no way, and then I believe this was on CNN, there is no way you can deny that Trump has made serious gains among union workers. So, we're getting very close to the union workers not having any confidence in their union leadership. Is there a way to, I guess, take advantage of that and get some of these highly political people out? I know that you're not a fan of forced unionism. The National Right to Work Foundation doesn't take a position on unionized by choice, but to get, leadership that actually is there representing the interests of the workers rather than the interests of the DNC and the deep state.
Yeah, well, this is basically the problem of federal labor law as it's currently constituted. And you're right, there's nothing wrong with people voluntarily joining a union. There's nothing wrong with people voluntarily paying dues to a union. The problem is that so much of union bosses' power right now is because of government coercion. So you've got the 24 states without right-to-work laws where people can be fired if they don't pay money to union bosses like Sean Fain. And even in the rest of the states, they basically have no way to hold these people accountable. So even in a right-to-work state, you can cut off your dues, but that means you can no longer vote on union leadership. So you're forced into this choice between, making sure your money isn't spent against things you hate, and then on the other side, but if you do that, you lose the very limited ability you have to determine how this union that supposedly represents you acts. And then, of course, on top of that, you've got all these workers. They never voted for these unions. I mean, there was a study a few years ago, and it found that 94% of currently unionized workers had never actually voted in a secret ballot to have the union that supposedly represents them. And, of course, at the National Right to Work Foundation, we represent workers all across the country who want votes to decertify the union, basically to kick the union out. And then where do we have to go for those? We go to the National Labor Relations Board. Says you can't hold the vote. We're going to find a reason to block it, trap these workers in a union.
Which happens all the time. Yeah, that happens all the time where the union workers say, we want to vote to decertify, and the NLRB says, sorry. And, nearly none of them actually voted favorably to have the union represent them in the first place. I bet you a lot of them would like to kick corrupt clown shows like Sean Fain out of leadership and actually have someone who, I don't know, might fight the Biden administration against EV mandates that are potentially putting thousands of auto workers out of work. Call me crazy. But I'm thinking that they might want to have a say in that, which is something, again, that the union leadership is never going to allow because they exist to support the Democratic Party.
Yeah, and unfortunately, without right to work and with this ability to stay in power without actually facing those that they claim to represent, they have little incentive. And so they can play politics with other people's money and push a very radical left-wing agenda, even as, like you said, it's undermining the very jobs of many of the rank and file.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Does Trump and Musk have to respond to this? I'm getting the wave, so I only have 10 seconds here.
Sure. Well, eventually they probably will be asked. We'll see. They'll probably drag this out for a couple months, so they, like I said, and then after the election, we'll see what they actually do. They'll just quietly
go away. I appreciate the time on the program. Patrick Simmons, National Right to Work Foundation. Thanks very much.
Great to talk to you, Vicki.